The massive space station hung like a jewel against the darkness of space. Its gleaming rings rotated slowly, creating artificial gravity for the thousands of beings who lived and worked inside. This was the heart of the Galactic Confederation. 17. Advanced alien species united in what they called peace and cooperation. Today, that number would become 18. Elena Reyes stood tall in her crisp blue uniform as the human shuttle approached the docking bay. At 42 years old, the former, Marine had silver streaks in her dark hair and a face that showed both strength and kindness. Earth had chosen her as their first ambassador to the Confederation for good reasons. She had both the diplomacy to make friends and the backbone to stand firm when needed. 2 minutes to docking, Ambassador, said Captain Lee from the pilot's seat. Elena nodded, watching as the enormous station grew larger in the view screen. Her small team of 5 other humans sat nearby, each looking nervous but excited. This was a historic moment for humanity. After decades of developing faster than light travel, Earth had finally been noticed by the galactic community. Remember, Elena told her team, we represent all of Earth today. Stand proud but respectful. The shuttle slipped into the docking bay with a gentle bump. Through the windows, Elena could see the welcoming committee, a colorful array of alien diplomats waiting in a formal line. Some had tentacles, others had scales, and a few looked almost human except for their unusual skin colors or extra limbs. Dr. Marcus Chen, Elena's chief scientist, whispered, "They don't look very excited to see us." He was right. The aliens maintained perfect politeness, but there was no warmth in their postures. This was a duty for them, not a celebration. The shuttle door opened with a hiss, and Elena led her team down the ramp. The station's air smelled clean but strange, like metals and unknown spices. Gravity felt slightly stronger than Earth normal, making their steps heavier. A tall, blue-skinned alien with 4 arms stepped forward. "Ambassador Reyes of Earth, I am Coordinator Talix. Welcome to Central Station. The Confederation extends greetings to your species." The translator device at Talix's throat made the words sound flat and emotionless. Elena gave the formal bow they had been taught. "Coordinator Talix, Earth. Thanks the Confederation for this welcome. We look forward to joining the galactic community and contributing to its prosperity." The aliens in the receiving line exchanged glances. One of them, a small green being with large eyes, made a sound that the translator interpreted as a laugh. Talix motioned toward the exit. "We will show you to your quarters. The formal introduction to the Senate will take place in 6 hours. Please use this time to rest from your journey." As they walked through the massive corridors of the station, Elena noticed how other aliens stopped to stare at the humans. Some pointed, others whispered behind their hands or tentacles. It wasn't the curious interest of meeting someone new. It felt more like watching animals in a zoo. "They don't think much of us, do they?" murmured Diane Okafor, Earth's trade representative. "We're newcomers," Elena replied quietly. "We need to earn their respect." Their quarters were comfortable but plain. 6 small rooms connected to a common area. As soon as the door closed behind their guide, the team gathered around the central table. "Well, that was cold," said Captain Lee, removing his formal cap. "Like we're an inconvenience." Elena nodded. "I expected some of this. According to the briefing materials, humans are considered physically weaker than most Confederation species. We're also one of the youngest spacefaring races by several thousand years. So we're basically children to them," Dr. Chen said, frowning. "For now," Elena answered. "Our job is to show them what humanity has to offer beyond physical strength." The team used their preparation time wisely, reviewing protocols and practicing phrases in the common diplomatic language. When Talix returned to escort them to the Senate chamber, they were ready. The Senate was a vast circular room with rising tiers of seats, each marked with the symbol of a different member species. Hundreds of aliens filled the space, their conversations creating a strange symphony of clicks, whistles, and rumbling voices. The humans entered through a small door at floor level. Immediately the chamber fell silent as all eyes turned to them. At the highest tier sat the most impressive being Elena had ever seen. Nearly 3 meters tall, with gleaming scales of deep purple and gold, the reptilian creature wore a cloak studded with glittering crystals. 2 massive bodyguards stood at attention beside him. Emperor Zakthran of the Arcturus Dominion, Talix announced quietly to Elena. The most influential leader in the Confederation. Elena could see why. Even from a distance, the Emperor radiated power and confidence. His eyes, yellow with vertical pupils, fixed on the human delegation with what looked like amused disdain. A bell chimed, and Coordinator Talix led Elena to the center of the chamber floor. Honored representatives, Talix announced, voice amplified throughout the room. I present Ambassador Elena Reyes of Earth, seeking membership for humanity in our Confederation. Elena stepped forward, feeling the weight of thousands of alien eyes upon her. The practice speech she delivered was perfect, formal, respectful, and brief. She spoke of Earth's hopes for peaceful exchange of knowledge and culture, of humanity's determination to be worthy partners in the galactic community. When she finished, there was a moment of silence. Then, from his high seat, Emperor Zakthran made a sound that needed no translation, a short, dismissive laugh. Such pretty words from such a fragile species, the Emperor said, his deep voice filling the chamber. Humans break so easily, do they not? And your planet, barely 5 billion population, limited resources, primitive technology. What exactly does Earth bring to our Confederation? The question hung in the air, both an insult and a challenge. Elena felt her team bristle behind her, but she kept her face calm. We bring new perspectives, Emperor, she answered steadily. Humanity has survived and thrived despite our physical limitations. We've overcome challenges through innovation and determination. Sometimes, the strongest materials are not the most flexible, and the most valuable contributions come from unexpected sources. The Emperor's scales shifted color slightly, a sign of surprise perhaps that she had answered him directly. Well spoken for a newcomer, he said. We shall see if actions match these confident words. The formal ceremony continued, but Elena noticed how other representatives watched the Emperor rather than the proceedings. Fear, she realized. Many of them feared him. Later, as the human delegation was escorted to a reception, Elena overheard 2 aliens speaking in what they thought was a private conversation. Another weak species to be controlled, one said. The Emperor already has plans for their world, replied the other, rich in water and biological diversity. Useful. Elena kept her face neutral, but her mind was racing. This wasn't the equal partnership Earth had been promised. Something was very wrong in the Galactic Confederation, and humanity had just stepped into the middle of it. That night, unable to sleep, Elena walked the quiet corridors of the station. She needed to understand this place better if she was going to protect Earth's interests. Turning down a maintenance hallway, she heard sounds of struggle, the unmistakable noise of someone being hurt. Without hesitation, Elena moved toward the sounds. Around the corner, she found 2 large Arcturus guards beating a smaller alien against the wall. The victim's blue blood spattered the floor. Stop, Elena called out, stepping forward without thinking. The guards turned, surprised to see a human, daring to interfere. And in that moment, Ambassador Elena Reyes took her first step toward the day she would drag an emperor across the Senate floor. I said stop. Elena moved forward, placing herself between the Arcturus guards and their victim. The guards exchanged glances, clearly surprised by her interference. One of them, a hulking reptilian with dull green scales, hissed at her. Human, this is not your business. Return to your quarters. Elena stood her ground. As Earth's ambassador, the safety of all beings on this station is my business. Behind her, the small alien was gasping for breath. Its skin was a pale blue with delicate tendrils framing a face marked with fear and pain. The second guard stepped closer to Elena. He was enormous, nearly twice her height, with muscles rippling under his scaled skin. Do you know who we serve? Human. Emperor Zakthran himself. It would be unfortunate to make an enemy of the Emperor on your first day. Elena felt fear tighten her chest, but she didn't move. and it would be unfortunate for the Emperor if the newest member of the Confederation reported an attack on a diplomat. Is that what this is? The guards hesitated, looking at each other. Finally, the first one snarled, "This one is nothing. A junior aide who forgot his place, but we will leave him to you, for now." They backed away slowly, disappearing around a corner. Only when their heavy footsteps faded did Elena kneel beside the injured alien. "Can you understand me?" she asked, gently. "I'm Ambassador Reyes from Earth." The blue alien nodded weakly. "Yeah, translator working." Its voice was soft and musical despite the pain. "I am Vril, junior diplomatic aide from Quilax. You should not have interfered, Ambassador. They will remember." "Let me help you back to your quarters," Elena said, helping Vril to his feet. "No," Vril said quickly. "Not safe. They have access codes." His large silver eyes darted around nervously. "There is a medical bay nearby, please." As they walked slowly down the corridor, Vril leaning on Elena for support, he spoke in quiet, frightened tones. "You are new. You do not understand how things work in the Confederation. Emperor Zekathron controls much more than just the Arcturus, Dominion. Many representatives fear him. Those who speak against him disappear." "But this is supposed to be a democratic alliance," Elena said, frowning. 17 equal species. Vril made a sound like sad laughter. "That is what the official records say. The reality is different. My people, the Calaxians, voted against an Arcturus mining operation last cycle. Now our home system is under review for safety violations. Our ships are detained, our trade restricted." They reached the medical bay, a sterile white room filled with strange equipment. A robotic attendant immediately began treating Vril's injuries. Elena waited patiently, her mind racing with questions. When the attendant finished, Vril looked much better, though still shaken. "Thank you for your help, Ambassador," he said formally, clearly nervous about having said too much. Elena handed him a small communication device. "If you need help again, contact me. Earth may be new to the Confederation, but we don't abandon friends." Vril took the device with trembling hands. "You are either very brave or very foolish, human. Perhaps both." He hesitated, then added, "If you truly wish to understand what happens here, come to Observation Deck 12 tomorrow at mid-cycle, alone." Elena told her team about the incident the next morning. They gathered in their common room, speaking in hushed voices despite the privacy screens they had activated. "This confirms what I noticed yesterday," Dr. Chen said, pushing his glasses up. "The representatives from smaller worlds look to the Emperor before they speak or vote. It's subtle, but clear once you watch for it." "We need more information," Elena decided. "I'm meeting Vril later today. In the meantime, I want each of you to make friendly contacts with other species. Listen more than you talk. Find out who might be allies." Captain Lee frowned. "Ambassador, if the Arcturus are as dangerous as they seem, shouldn't we be more careful? Earth is counting on us." "That's exactly why we can't ignore this," Elena replied firmly. "If Earth joins a corrupt system without understanding it, we become part of the problem. We need to know what we're dealing with." Observation Deck 12 was nearly empty when Elena arrived. It was a small platform with a stunning view of the station's outer rings and the starfield beyond. Vril was waiting, along with another alien Elena hadn't met before, a tall, willowy being with bark-like skin and glowing green eyes. "Ambassador, this is Thalia of the Tellurians," Vril said quietly. "She is like-minded." Thalia bowed slightly. "We have watched your species from afar, human. Your people are young but interesting. You adapt quickly. You question. These are rare traits in the Confederation now." "What exactly is happening here?" Elena asked directly. "How has the Emperor gained so much power?" The aliens shared a look before Thalia answered. "It began subtly 5 cycles ago. The Arcturus offered protection, technology, and trade benefits to struggling worlds. Those who accepted soon found themselves unable to vote against Arcturus. Interests? Bribes?" Elena asked. "Partly. Vril whispered. But there is more. We believe the Emperor uses technology to influence votes. Thalia nodded. My people are engineers. We detected unusual energy patterns in the Senate chamber during important votes. Something affects the brain waves of most species, making them more agreeable to the Emperor's wishes. Elena frowned. Mind control? Is that even possible? Limited influence, not control, Thalia corrected. It works best on species with certain brain patterns. Some are more resistant than others. She studied Elena with interest. We do not know how it might affect humans. Why are you telling me this? Elena asked. I'm new here. I have no power or influence. Because you stood up to the guards, Vril said simply. No one does that anymore. And because we are running out of time, Thalia touched a device on her wrist, projecting a small hologram showing an official document. 3 days from now, there will be a special vote. The Emperor has proposed an emergency security measure, giving him direct control over all Confederation, defense forces, and trade routes. If it passes, he won't need to pretend anymore. Elena finished grimly. Exactly, Thalia said. We have formed a small resistance. Representatives from 7 worlds who still try to fight his influence. We need Earth's help. Elena's mind raced with the implications. Earth was supposed to be joining a peaceful alliance of worlds. Instead, they were walking into an emerging dictatorship. What can we do? She asked. We're just 6 humans against an emperor. Vril and Thalia exchanged another look. We need access to the Central Archives, Thalia explained. There are records there. Evidence of the Emperor's actions against worlds that opposed him. Planets that suffered natural disasters after voting against Arcturus interests. Species that once had seats in the Senate but are now extinct. But the archives are heavily guarded. And why do you think humans can help? Elena pressed. Because you're unexpected, Vril said. The Emperor has studied all Confederation species for weaknesses. He knows how we think, how we act. But humans are new, unpredictable, and what? Elena asked. And the influence technology may not work on your kind, Thalia finished. We won't know until you enter the Senate chamber during a vote. If you remain clear-headed while others grow confused. Elena took a deep breath. The situation was far more dangerous than she had imagined. Earth had sent her to establish diplomatic relations, not to fight a corrupt emperor. But if the Confederation fell under Zuckathron's complete control, Earth would be next. I need to discuss this with my team, she said finally. This affects all of us, all of Earth. As Thalia and Vril nodded in understanding, an alarm suddenly blared throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors. Over the station's communication system, a formal voice announced, all representatives to the Senate chamber. Emergency session called by order of Emperor Zuckathron. Attendance is mandatory. Vril's face paled to a lighter blue. It's too soon. The vote wasn't scheduled until 3 days from now. He must suspect something, Thalia whispered. Elena's hands tightened into fists as she made her decision. Let's find out if this influence technology works on humans. I'll be in that chamber. She turned to leave, then paused. If humans are
immune to the Emperor's technology, he's about to discover that Earth isn't as weak as he thinks.
Elena rushed through the corridors of the station, her mind racing. She needed to reach her team before the emergency session began. Other representatives hurried in the same direction, their faces showing confusion and worry. When she arrived, at the human quarters, her team was already preparing to leave. Ambassador, what's happening? Dr. Chen asked, adjusting his formal uniform. I'll explain on the way, Elena said quickly. But first, I need you all to do something unusual. She lowered her voice. When we enter the Senate chamber, pay close attention to how you feel. If your thoughts become foggy or if you feel strangely agreeable, signal me discreetly. Captain Lee frowned. Are we in danger? Possibly, Elena admitted. But this is also an opportunity. I've learned things about the Confederation, troubling things. This emergency session might confirm my suspicions. As they walked rapidly toward the Senate chamber, Elena briefed them on her meeting with Vril and Thalia. The team listened with growing concern. Mind control technology? Diane Okafor whispered in disbelief. Can that really work? Not control. Exactly, Elena corrected. More like subtle influence, and we don't know if it affects humans. Dr. Chen nodded thoughtfully. Human brains are electrically similar to other species, but our neural pathways evolved differently. It's possible we process thoughts in ways the Arcturus haven't accounted for. They arrived at the massive doors of the Senate chamber. Representatives from all 17 Confederation species streamed inside, taking their assigned seats. The human section was at the lowest level, furthest from the Emperor's elevated position. As they settled into their seats, Elena scanned the chamber. Emperor Zacathran sat regally on his throne-like chair, his purple and gold scales gleaming under the lights. His yellow eyes moved coldly over the assembly. Near him stood several Arcturus officials, one holding a metal box with blinking lights. That device, Elena whispered to Dr. Chen. Could it be the influence technology? Chen studied it discreetly. Possibly. It appears to be emitting some kind of signal. The chamber quieted as Coordinator Talix stepped to the central podium. Representatives of the Confederation, Talix announced formally. Emperor Zacathran has called this emergency session to address a security threat. The Emperor will speak. Zacathran rose to his full height, towering over even his own bodyguards. His voice filled the chamber without need for amplification. Honored colleagues, he began smoothly. I have received disturbing intelligence reports. Rebel forces are planning attacks on Confederation worlds. These terrorists seek to destabilize our peaceful alliance. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Elena noticed many representatives nodding along with the Emperor's words, their eyes slightly unfocused. In response to this grave threat, Zacathran continued, I propose an Emergency Security Act. This temporary measure will centralize defense forces under Arcturus command and establish security checkpoints in all major travel routes. Elena felt a slight buzzing in her head, like the beginning of a headache, but her thoughts remained clear. Looking at her team, she saw them all alert and focused, though Captain Lee was rubbing his temples. The vote will take place immediately, Talix announced. Please register your position. Voting panels lit up at each representative's station. Elena watched in dismay as one section after another glowed green for approval. Few representatives even paused to consider the proposal. Something's definitely affecting them, Dr. Chen whispered. Look at their eyes. Dilated pupils, reduced focus. But we're not affected, Elena replied quietly. At least not completely. When the human panel activated, Elena hesitated. Voting against the Emperor now would reveal their immunity to his technology. But supporting a measure that would give him even more power was unthinkable. She pressed the red button for rejection. Immediately, Emperor Zacathran's yellow eyes fixed on the human section. His scales darkened slightly, a sign of anger, Elena guessed. But the Emperor said nothing as the final votes were tallied. The Emergency Security Act is approved, Talix announced, with only one delegation opposed. As representatives filed out of the chamber, many looking slightly confused, Elena felt the Emperor's gaze following her team. They had just made a powerful enemy. Back in their quarters, Elena called an urgent meeting. We're immune, she stated firmly. The technology affects us slightly. I felt something, but not enough to control our decisions. Which makes us dangerous, to the Emperor, Captain Lee added grimly. And valuable to the Resistance, Elena said. We need to act quickly. The Emergency Security Act gives Zacathran more power, but he still needs to maintain appearances. We have a small window of opportunity. Dr. Chen tapped his tablet. I've been researching Confederation history since you told us about this. There's an interesting pattern of natural disasters affecting worlds that opposed Arcturus policies. Statistically impossible coincidences. We need evidence, Elena said. Proof we can present to the Senate. How? Diane asked. The archives are guarded, and now the Emperor knows we're resistant to his influence. Elena thought for a moment. We need help from other species, ones who might be partially resistant or who have found ways to shield themselves. A soft chime at their door interrupted them. When Elena opened it, she found a small package with no marking. Inside was a data chip and a note with 3 words: Central Park, midnight. The station's Central Park was an enormous biodome filled with plants from dozens of worlds. At night, the overhead lights dimmed to simulate darkness, though emergency lighting created pools of soft blue light along the paths. Elena walked alone, following the winding trail past exotic trees and flowering bushes. The air smelled sweet and earthy, a welcome change from the sterile corridors. Near the center of the park, beside a small pond, she found Vril waiting. With him were 5 other aliens, each from a different species. They stood in a loose circle, speaking in hushed tones. Ambassador Reyes, Vril said, his voice tight with tension. You voted against the Emperor today. Yes, Elena confirmed. The influence technology has limited effect on humans. One of the aliens, a tall, insect-like being with compound eyes, clicked its mandibles. As we suspected, different neural pathways, like the meridians before they were eliminated. This is the resistance? Elena asked, looking at the small group. Part of it, Vril answered. Representatives from worlds that have found ways to resist. Some use technology to shield their minds. Others, like the Volari, have natural immunity due to their hive mind structure. The insect-like alien nodded. I am Zan, of the Volari. We communicate through shared consciousness. The Emperor's technology cannot easily confuse such minds. We've been gathering evidence, said another alien with metallic skin that seemed to shift colors in the dim light. But we needed someone who could access the central archives without falling under influence. Someone like me, Elena realized. Yes, Vril confirmed. The archives contain records of the Emperor's communications with his military commanders, orders for attacks disguised as natural disasters, evidence of sabotage against species who resisted too strongly. If we had that evidence, Zan added, we could present it at the next full Senate Assembly. Even with the influence technology, solid proof would convince many representatives to stand against the Emperor. Elena considered their words carefully. This was far beyond her diplomatic mission, but Earth had joined the Confederation expecting an equal partnership, not a thinly veiled dictatorship. How would we access the archives? She asked finally. The metallic alien, who introduced himself as Krell of the Telsian people, produced a small device. This will bypass security for exactly 3 minutes, enough time to download the evidence we need. And then what? Elena asked. Then, Vril said, his silver eyes shining with determination, we start a revolution. As the small group discussed their plan, none of them noticed the tiny surveillance drone hovering in the branches above them. In his private chambers, Emperor Zecthron watched the meeting with growing rage, his scales darkening to a deep, dangerous purple. So, he hissed to his commander, the human thinks she can challenge me. Prepare a special welcome for Ambassador Reyes when she tries to access the archives. It's time to show Earth what happens to those who defy the Arcturus dominion. The plan was set for the following night. Elena studied the station map on her tablet, memorizing the route to the central archives. According to Vril, the security would be lightest during third shift when most of the station slept. I don't like this, Captain Lee said as the human team gathered in their quarters. You shouldn't go alone, Ambassador. I have to, Elena replied firmly. One person has a better chance of getting in and out unnoticed, and if something goes wrong, Earth needs you all to continue the mission. Dr. Chen handed her a small device. This will copy data quickly. Just place it on any archive terminal. Elena nodded, slipping the device into her pocket. If I'm not back in 2 hours, contact Vril. He'll help you reach the other resistance members. As she prepared to leave, Diane Okafor gave her a tight hug. Be careful. The Emperor already sees us. As a threat, Elena smiled reassuringly. Humans have been underestimated throughout our history. It's one of our advantages. The station corridors were dimly lit during night cycle. Elena moved quietly, avoiding the main pathways. She wore a simple dark uniform without Earth insignia, just another station worker on a late shift. As she approached the archives section, she spotted 2 Arcturus guards at the main entrance. Too many for the time of night, according to Vril's information. Something felt wrong. Elena retreated around a corner, thinking quickly. There had to be another way in. The station schematics had shown maintenance tunnels running throughout the structure. If she could find an access point. A soft noise behind her made Elena turn. A tall figure stepped from the shadows, one of the metallic-skinned aliens from the resistance meeting. Krell, Elena whispered in relief. The security is heavier than expected. Krell's skin rippled with silvery patterns. Yes, plans have changed. Follow me. There's another entrance through the maintenance shafts. Elena hesitated. This wasn't part of the original plan, but with guards blocking the main entrance, she had little choice. She followed Krell down a narrow service corridor. How? Did you know I was here? She asked quietly as they walked. Vril sent me to help, Krell replied without looking back. The resistance feared something might have changed. They reached a small hatch in the wall. Krell entered a code and the door slid open, revealing a tight tunnel filled with cables and pipes. This will lead us directly to the archive storage room, Krell explained. Much safer than the main entrance. Elena squeezed into the tunnel behind him. The space was cramped but passable. They crawled for several minutes, turning at various junctions, until they reached another hatch. Krell punched in another code and it opened. They emerged into a vast, dimly lit room. Tall data servers hummed quietly, their lights blinking in rhythmic patterns. At the center stood a circular console, the main archive terminal. We did it, Elena whispered, moving toward the terminal. Yes, Krell said, his voice suddenly different, colder. You did exactly as expected, Ambassador Reyes. Bright lights flashed on, temporarily blinding Elena. When her vision cleared, she saw Emperor Zechathron standing across the room, surrounded by Arcturus guards, and beside him was Krell, his metallic skin now gleaming proudly. Thank you for your assistance, Counselor Krell, the Emperor said smoothly. The Telsian people will be rewarded for their loyalty. Elena's stomach dropped with the realization. You betrayed the resistance. Krell's skin shifted to a smug gold color. There was never any real resistance, human. Just a few deluded fools, and a perfect trap for you. Emperor Zechathron stepped forward, his massive form towering over Elena. Did you really think I wouldn't notice your immunity to the influence technology? Or your little meeting in the park? He laughed, a deep rumbling sound. I've ruled the Confederation for 20 cycles. I've eliminated entire species that posed less threat than you. Where are the others? Elena demanded. Vril, Zan. What
have you done with them? They have been contained, the Emperor replied with cruel amusement. Soon they will be forgotten, just like the others who opposed me.
Guards moved to surround Elena. She glanced around, looking for any escape route, but found none. Your species is interesting, Ambassador. Zechathron continued, circling her slowly. Physically weak, yet surprisingly resistant to mental influence. A fascinating combination, one worth studying before your kind is dealt with permanently. Earth? We'll never submit to you, Elena said firmly. Earth knows nothing about the true nature of the Confederation, the Emperor replied dismissively. By the time your planet learns what has happened here, it will be too late. Your ship will suffer an unfortunate accident on its return journey. Cosmic radiation, perhaps. A tragic loss that will discourage further human interference. One of the guards stepped forward with restraints. Take her to the detention level, the Emperor ordered, and find the other humans. I want them all secured before morning cycle. As the cold metal cuffs closed around her wrists, Elena felt a deep sense of failure. She had walked into a trap, endangering not just herself but all of Earth. The guards led her roughly from the archive room, down several corridors, and into a lift that descended deep into the station's lower levels. They emerged in a stark, cold section that didn't appear on any public station maps. Welcome to the Emperor's special collection, one guard sneered, shoving her forward. The detention level was a long hallway lined with transparent cells. As Elena was marched past them, she saw aliens of various species watching with dull, hopeless eyes. Some she recognized from Confederation records. Others were entirely unknown to her. These are the troublemakers, the guard explained with cruel satisfaction. Representatives who couldn't accept the Emperor's vision. Some have been here, for cycles. They stopped at an empty cell. The barrier slid open and Elena was pushed roughly inside. The transparent door sealed with a soft hiss. Your team will join you soon, the guard said. Enjoy your stay, Ambassador. Left alone, Elena examined her cell. Simple but efficient. No obvious weaknesses in the barrier. No tools or objects inside that could be used. Just a small sleeping platform and basic sanitation unit. In the cell directly across from hers, an alien with long, tentacle-like limbs moved closer to the barrier. Its skin was pale green, its large eyes filled with sad wisdom. You are the human, it said softly, its voice somehow penetrating the barrier. The one who voted against the Emperor. Yes, Elena replied. My name is Elena Reyes, ambassador from Earth. I am Jorex, once speaker for the Meridian Council, the alien said, before the Meridians were declared extinct in an unfortunate solar flare incident. Elena moved closer to her barrier. Your entire species. Not entirely, Jorex corrected. Just those who opposed the Emperor. The rest submitted and were absorbed into Arcturus territories. They no longer call themselves Meridians. How many species has he destroyed? Elena asked, horrified. 4 completely, 3 partially, many more subjugated through fear, Jorex replied. The Arcturus expands slowly, carefully, always maintaining the illusion of the Confederation. Elena closed her eyes, processing this terrible information. The situation was far worse than she had imagined. This wasn't just corruption, it was systematic genocide disguised as politics. Is there any way out of here? She asked quietly. Jorex's expression shifted slightly, the Meridian equivalent of a sad smile. No one has ever escaped the Emperor's collection, but no human has ever been here before. Perhaps your kind will surprise us all. Elena looked down at her restraints, then back at the cells containing representatives from supposedly extinct species. There had to be a way to expose the Emperor's crimes. There had to be justice. In that moment, Elena Reyes made a silent promise. Not just to escape, but to tear down the corrupt system that had allowed such horrors to exist behind a facade of civilization. No matter the cost, no matter the danger, she would find a way. What she didn't know was that across the station, her human team was already putting a desperate plan into motion. A plan that would change the Confederation forever. Dr. Marcus Chen paced nervously in the human quarters. It's been 3 hours, something's wrong. Captain Lee nodded grimly. Elena would have contacted us by now. He turned to the rest of the team. We need to find her, but we have to be careful. If the Emperor has her, a soft chime interrupted him. The door slid open, revealing Vril. The small blue alien looked terrified, his tendrils trembling. They've taken her, he whispered. Krell betrayed us. The Emperor's guards have Ambassador Reyes in the detention level. Where? Captain Lee demanded, reaching for his sidearm. The lower level, section D7, Vril replied, but you can't just break in there. It's heavily guarded, and the Emperor will be expecting you to try. Dr. Chen thought for a moment. Is there another way to help her? Some legal process we could invoke? Vril's silver eyes widened. Actually, yes, there might be. He moved to their central table, activating a holographic display. I need to show you something in the Confederation's founding charter. The document appeared before them. Ancient text written in the common galactic language. Vril scrolled through it rapidly. Here, he said, pointing to a section. The right of physical challenge. It's an ancient provision almost forgotten but never removed from the charter. Dr. Chen leaned closer, reading the text. A representative who suspects corruption at the highest level may issue a direct physical challenge to the head of the Confederation? Yes, Vril confirmed. It dates back to the earliest days, when disputes were sometimes settled through personal combat. The provision was kept as a symbol of equality, that even the most powerful leader could be held accountable by the simplest citizen. Has anyone ever used it? Diane Okafor asked. Not in living memory, Vril admitted. It would be considered extreme. Captain Lee frowned. And suicidal, against someone like Zak Thran. He's 3 times our size and strength. But the challenger chooses the nature of the contest, Vril explained, highlighting another section. It doesn't have to be direct combat. It could be any physical challenge. Dr. Chen's expression changed as understanding dawned. And we know something about humans that the Emperor doesn't. Elena sat on the floor of her cell, examining the restraints on her wrists. They were solid, no obvious way to remove them without the proper key. Across the corridor, Jorex watched her with interest. You haven't given up hope, the Meridian observed. Most new arrivals spend days in despair. Humans are stubborn, Elena replied with a small smile, and we have practice at being underestimated. A commotion at the far end of the detention level caught her attention. Guards were rushing toward the entrance, weapons ready. Through the transparent walls, Elena could hear raised voices. Moments later, 2 Arcturus guards appeared, dragging a familiar figure between them. Dr. Chen, Elena called out as they threw him into the cell next to hers. Chen looked up, adjusting his glasses, which had been knocked askew. Despite a bruise forming on his cheek, he smiled at her. Ambassador, good to see you're alive. What happened? Did they capture all of you? Elena asked urgently. Not exactly, Chen replied cryptically. Captain Lee and the others are proceeding with alternative measures. Before he could explain further, a deep voice echoed through the detention level. Bring them both. Emperor. Skathran himself stood at the corridor entrance, his massive form filling the space. Guards hurried to obey, opening their cells and roughly escorting Elena and Dr. Chen toward the Emperor. Your colleagues have done something very interesting, Ambassador, Zikthran said, his yellow eyes fixed on Elena. They've invoked an ancient provision, one I did not expect humans to discover. Elena glanced at Chen, who gave her the slightest of nods. The right of physical challenge. The Emperor continued, his scales shifting color with irritation. It seems humans are not just physically weak but also foolish. No species has dared challenge the Arcturus directly in over 200 cycles. They were led into a lift that ascended rapidly. When the doors opened, Elena was surprised to find themselves at the entrance to the Senate chamber. Inside, every representative seat was filled, and a tense silence hung in the air. Coordinator Talix stood at the central podium, looking deeply uncomfortable. As required by the founding charter, the challenge has been formally submitted and must be honored, he announced as Elena and Chen were brought forward. At the base of the podium stood Captain Lee, Diane Okafor, and the rest of the human team. Lee stepped forward, his face grim but determined. As acting representative of Earth in Ambassador Reyes's absence, I issued the challenge, he explained to Elena. But the charter allows the appointed representative to stand in the actual contest. Which means me, Elena realized, straightening her shoulders despite her restraints. Emperor Zikthran laughed, the sound echoing through the silent chamber. By all means, let it be you, Ambassador. It makes no difference. No human can stand against an Arcturus in physical contest. Talix cleared his throat nervously. According to the charter, the restraints must be removed and the challenger may select the nature of the physical challenge. Guards reluctantly removed Elena's cuffs. She rubbed her wrists, looking directly at the Emperor, who towered over her. The contrast between them was striking, her modest human height against his 3-meter frame, her soft skin against his armored scales, her apparent weakness against his obvious strength. What do you choose, human? Zikathron asked mockingly. How do you wish to fail before the entire Confederation? Elena glanced at Dr. Chen, who nodded slightly. They had planned for this. I choose endurance, she declared, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. A test of physical persistence, not momentary strength. Murmurs spread through the gathered representatives. Endurance was not a quality associated with the Arcturus, who relied on overwhelming force rather than sustained effort. Specifically, Elena continued, we will each carry a ceremonial weight across the Senate floor for as long as possible. The first to drop the weight loses. Talix consulted the charter displayed before him. This is acceptable under the provision. The challenge weight will be the stone of founding, the symbolic cornerstone of the Confederation. At his signal, attendants brought forth a massive stone tablet, inscribed with the original signatures of the founding species. It was enormous, nearly 2 meters across and thick as a human arm. The Emperor laughed again. You choose to lift a weight against me? Perhaps humans are not just weak, but stupid as well. He flexed his powerful arms. Very well, I accept. Elena looked at the stone, then at her team. Dr. Chen gave her an encouraging nod. They had chosen carefully, based on what they knew about human physiology versus Arcturus biology. Talix raised his voice, addressing the entire Senate. The terms are set. If Ambassador Reyes prevails, she may demand one irrefutable action from Emperor Zucthran. If the Emperor prevails, Earth's petition to join the Confederation will be permanently denied, and humans will be barred from Confederation space. The stone of founding was placed on a low platform at the center of the Senate floor. Zucthran stepped forward first, casually lifting the massive stone as if it were a minor burden. His yellow eyes gleamed with amusement as he held it easily against his chest. Your turn, human, he said, setting the stone back down with a heavy thud. Elena approached the stone, aware of hundreds of alien eyes watching her. Many representatives leaned forward, curious to see if she could even lift it. She crouched, positioned, her hands underneath the stone, and with a deep breath lifted. The weight was immense, nearly 200 kilograms of dense mineral. Every muscle in her body strained against the load. But slowly, steadily, she raised it. A collective gasp went through the Senate chamber as Elena straightened, holding the stone before her. Sweat already beaded on her forehead from the effort, but her eyes remained fixed on the Emperor with unwavering determination. The challenge had begun. The Senate chamber fell silent as both challengers stood holding the massive stone of founding. At Coordinator Talix's signal, the endurance contest officially began. Emperor Zucthran looked relaxed, even bored, as he held the stone against his chest. His powerful scaled arm showed no sign of strain. He smiled coldly at Elena, certain of his victory. You have made a grave miscalculation, human, he said. Arcturus warriors train from hatching to build strength. I can hold this weight for days if necessary. Elena didn't waste breath on a reply. Every ounce of her concentration focused on maintaining her grip on the stone. The weight pulled at her muscles, sending sharp pains through her shoulders and back. She steadied her breathing, finding a rhythm that would conserve energy. On the sidelines, Dr. Chen watched intently, occasionally checking the time. Captain, Li stood beside him, his face tense with worry. Will this work? Li whispered. It has to, Chen replied quietly. Humans evolved as persistence hunters. We can't match an Arcturus in raw strength, but endurance? That's where we shine. The first hour passed slowly. Neither challenger moved from their position. The Emperor continued to look comfortable, while Elena's face glistened with sweat. Representatives from various species watched with growing interest. Many had expected the human to give up within minutes. At the 2-hour mark, Zucthran spoke again, his voice still strong. Is this truly the best strategy Earth could devise, to prolong your inevitable defeat? Elena's arms trembled visibly now, but her eyes remained steady. Not prolonging, she managed to say through gritted teeth. Winning. Another hour passed. Elena's body screamed for relief, but she refused to yield. Her mind drifted to Earth, to the mountains she had climbed, the marathons she had run. Human bodies were designed to endure, to keep going when stronger. Creatures had to rest. The Emperor's mocking smile had faded. His breathing had become heavier, and a slight tremor could be seen in his massive arms. The Arcturus were built for explosive power, not sustained effort. Their muscles were larger but tired more quickly than human muscles. "Notice his scales," Dr. Chen murmured to the team. "They're darkening around his arms. Blood flow is being redirected." He's struggling. By the fourth hour, the mood in the chamber had shifted dramatically. Representatives leaned forward in their seats, watching in disbelief as the mighty Emperor of the Arcturus began to show clear signs of fatigue, while the small human continued to hold. Scifi arms now shook visibly. His breathing was labored, and his yellow eyes had lost their confident gleam. Sweat, or whatever the Arcturus equivalent was, ran down his scales in thick rivulets. "Impossible," he gasped, glaring at Elena. "What trickery is this?" Elena's entire body was in agony, her muscles burning with effort, but seeing the Emperor's distress gave her renewed determination. "No trick," she replied, her voice strained but steady. "Just human endurance." In the audience, Jorex, the Meridian, and other formerly imprisoned representatives watched with growing hope. They had been brought to witness the Emperor's triumph, but were now seeing something entirely unexpected. 5 hours into the challenge, Emperor Zakthran's mighty legs began to buckle. The stone slipped in his grasp, nearly falling before he managed to readjust. The movement sent a ripple of excitement through the watching Senate. "He's failing," Vril whispered, his silver eyes wide with amazement. Elena was beyond pain now. Her mind had entered a state familiar to human endurance athletes, a place where suffering became abstract, where determination overrode physical limitations. Her vision narrowed to a single point. Keep holding, outlast him, do not yield. Suddenly, a loud thud echoed through the chamber. The stone of founding had slipped from Emperor Zakthran's grasp, crashing to the floor. The mighty Arcturus leader fell to his knees, his chest heaving with exhaustion. For a moment, the Senate was completely silent. Then, Coordinator Talix's voice rang out. "The challenger is victorious. By the ancient right, Ambassador Elena Reyes may now claim one irrefutable action from Emperor Zakthran." Elena carefully lowered her stone to the ground, her arms nearly numb from the effort. She stood straight, though every muscle protested the movement. Representatives from all 17 species stared in shock. "My demand is simple," Elena declared, her voice stronger than seemed possible after such an ordeal. "I require the Emperor's private communication records to be displayed publicly here and now. Let the entire Confederation see the truth." Zakthran's eyes blazed with fury. "You cannot—" "She can," Talix interrupted, checking the charter. "The demand is valid and must be honored immediately." Technicians were summoned, and under Talix's supervision, the Emperor's private communications were accessed. Large holographic displays appeared throughout the chamber, showing thousands of messages. Dr. Chen quickly directed the search. "Look for communications about the Meridian extinction event and the Qualaxian sanctions." The evidence was overwhelming. Message after message revealed the Emperor's direct orders for attacks disguised as natural disasters, for sabotage of peaceful worlds, for the imprisonment of opposing representatives. The Senate watched in horror as the true nature of their leader was exposed. "You see?" Elena addressed the stunned representatives, her voice gaining strength. "This is not a confederation of equals. It's an empire of fear, built on lies, and the suffering of those who dared to speak truth." Emperor Zakthran rose to his feet, his scales now dark with rage. "Guards!" he roared. "Arrest them all! This human has violated—" "Stand down," came a voice from the Arcturus section. One of the Emperor's own commanders stood up. "The challenge was fair. The evidence is clear. We will not follow these orders." Throughout the chamber, representatives began to stand, first a few, then dozens, then hundreds. Species that had feared each other for generations now united in their shock and outrage. Zakthran looked around wildly, seeing his support crumbling. With a roar of fury, he lunged toward Elena, claws extended. "Then I'll kill you myself." What happened next would be recorded in Confederation history and retold for generations. As the Emperor charged, Elena, exhausted but determined, sidestepped his attack. Using his own momentum against him, she grabbed his arm and, with strength born of pure adrenaline, pulled the massive Emperor off balance. He stumbled, and Elena held on, dragging the struggling Emperor across the polished floor of the Senate chamber. Representatives gasped as the small human pulled the mighty Arcturus leader to the Central Justice Circle, a symbolic spot where, according to ancient tradition, judgments were rendered. "This," Elena announced, her voice echoing through the silent chamber as she released the Emperor within the circle, "is where justice begins. Not with strength alone, but with endurance. Not with fear, but with truth." Security forces, no longer loyal to Zacathran, surrounded the Emperor. As he was led away, the Senate erupted in activity. Representatives rushed to free imprisoned, colleagues to establish emergency protocols, to begin the long process of healing the broken Confederation. In the days that followed, Elena worked tirelessly with leaders from all worlds to create a new charter, one with true checks on power. The imprisoned representatives were released. Planets that had suffered under Arcturus rule began to rebuild. The influence technology was dismantled. 1 month later, at the signing of the new charter, Jorex the Meridian approached Elena. "You have given my people, all people, a future again," he said solemnly. "How did you know you could defeat him?" Elena smiled. "Humans have a long history of being underestimated. Our strength isn't in our muscles. It's in our ability to endure, to keep going when others would stop, to stand up again after being knocked down." As representatives from all 18 worlds, including Earth, gathered to sign the new agreement, Elena looked around at the rebuilt Senate chamber. The story had already spread throughout the galaxy. The day a human dragged an Emperor across the Senate floor, not through superior strength or advanced technology, but through the uniquely human traits of endurance, determination, and the will to fight for justice no matter the odds. Earth had found its place among the stars.